Early voting will start on July 12th. It'll probably be really hot on Tuesday, August 1st, so go vote on a day like today instead of when it's 110. Because here in Douglas County, we like early voting. The candidates did get our questions ahead of time, so I hope that helped everybody prepare a little bit about what they would like to say about those topics. And first, though, we are just going to. Is it okay if you go first? If you're just I promised whoever sat at the first spot wouldn't have to go first, but now I ask. Pull back. If you could just give us your names, a little bit about yourself, and why you're running for school board, that would be great.
All right, I'm EJ Gonzalez. I actually have 4 kids in the school district right now, 2 of which are special needs. So that's a very important topic for myself. That is one of the reasons why I'm running. The main reason is my eldest son was very upset when the music director left Free State High. I think we all saw the public announcement on that. And as a father, I think we can all understand that we're trying to always protect our kids, but him being 15, I gotta start letting the leash off a little bit more, right? But I wanted to show him a way that we can always get our voices heard in different mechanisms, and just give him an opportunity to have his voice heard, even if it's mine still being in the foreground there. So that's the main reason here. I want to see a difference in our community. I want to see a change, and I want to see our district grow in the most positive way possible. Thank you.
I am worried about public education. I'm worried about racism in our schools, unfair wages, mental health, special education students not receiving services, marginalized students getting lost in the shuffle, school lunch fees going to collections, unsafe routes to school, bullying, LGBTQ students and trans students and staff, teachers and principals leaving our district in droves. And I'm worried about the instability our community has experienced from school closures and budget cuts on top of a pandemic. Oh, I'm Ariel Miner. I truly... Would you also remind people whether you're running for the 2-year or the 4-year? Yes, I'm running for the 2-year seat. I truly believe that if we work together, we can transform our district and make the changes that are desperately needed for our children. That's why I'm running for school board and why I joined Carol, Kevin, and Yolanda and the movement Kansans United for Public Schools to work to fix the school funding formula so we can give our children the education they all deserve. I was a substitute teacher last year, and I saw firsthand how incredibly challenging it is to be in a room with 25, 30 children who all have different needs, and how incredibly important education is for everyone. And this inspired me to fight for public education. I'm Ariel Miner. I have 4 children in the district, and I'm running for the 2-year seat.
I'm Jody Meyer, and I am one of the folks running for one of the 4-year seats. I have 3 children who've been in USD 497 since they were in kindergarten. They went to Broken Arrow, Billy Mills, and Lawrence High. My oldest son will be a junior at KU in the fall. My middle son just graduated from Lawrence High School and is going to KU in the fall. And my youngest son will be a junior. While my kids have been in school, I was really actively involved at Broken Arrow in the PTA. When my kids got to South and Billy Mills, I was active in the parent organization. But as you know, if you've been a middle school parent, there's like 5 people there. So I don't want to make it sound like that was a immense amount of work. And also the site council. And during COVID, I obtained my substitute teaching license because I thought we needed teachers. So I've been subbing for the last 2 years, which quite frankly is a real eye-opener for anybody who thinks that there's not some issues that are going on right now. And in my law practice, I've done a lot of work with families, child needed care cases, juvenile offender cases, and I've done some work for parents and kids advocating for special education issues. Why I'm running for school board is a number of things. I think the straw that broke the camel's back for me was the teachers that left the week that we were to turn in for the race. The number of good quality teachers who have been here a long time, who are leaving. And the fact of the matter is, it's not finances. That's not the sole reason people are leaving. We are having people leave for reasons related to administration and other issues, and those issues, quite frankly, just aren't being addressed. The other issues are discipline problems in school, bullying issues in school, all sorts of things like that have been going on a while, and we've got to put those at the forefront. Thank you.
My name is Ann Costello, and I am running for the 4-year seat. I grew up in the Olathe public school system. I was very happy and lucky to be able to do that, and I received a great education. I want that same great education for my children. So about a year ago, my husband and I were deciding to move. We wanted a new school for our son. It wasn't anything that the school did or didn't do for him. The school was amazing. We were at Broken Arrow, but my son, socially, he just needed a fresh start. So when we were talking about where we wanted to move, it was a discussion. Do we stay in Lawrence, or do we go up to Johnson County to one of the big 3 school districts there, where we knew he could also receive a great education? We ultimately decided to stay here in Lawrence. It's where we started our family. This is where all of our friends are. It's the town that we love. So we wanted to stay here, but that was kind of the kicker. Like, that is what was the final motivation to get me to run, because I wanted to ensure that my kids were going to get the same kind of great education that I was able to receive. In the years leading up to now, I've been a member of the PTA at both Broken Arrow and Sunflower. I've even served as the treasurer. I was on the school site councils, the superintendent's advisory board. I'm on the board for the Lawrence Schools Foundation, and I served as a member on the Futures Committee. Those positions only allowed me to see so much. You know, I was doing that because I wanted firsthand knowledge of what was happening, but I couldn't see everything, and I certainly couldn't impact very much that way. So, you know, running for school board is something that I've thought about for a really long time. My husband is also a teacher in the district, so not only do I see how decisions impact our students, but I see how they impact our teachers as well. He even started as a para, so we have a little bit of experience there. But, you know, running for office is a scary thing, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it, but I knew that if I wanted to be able to actually make impactful change, then I had to push myself kind of out of my comfort zone. So, you know, Topeka has underfunded our schools for probably since the 90s or longer, but they're not wholly to blame for the situation that we're in. Past boards, you know, kind of pushed the decisions ahead, kicked the can, and that's kind of led us to where we're at now. I hope to earn your vote and serve the community with the goal of making education better for all of our students. Thank you. I don't know, did I say 4-year? Sorry.
4-year. Hi, my name is Rachel Stemblingbear. I am also going for a 4-year term. I grew up in Gladstone, Missouri, in the public school over there. My mother was a paraprofessional in special education, and so education has been in my life throughout. Before she went back to work as a para, she was very involved in PTA and different school programs, and so I thought that's just what you do when you have kids. So I moved here in 2009, met my husband while attending KU, and then after we were married, he informed me that we were staying here. So only to look for jobs here, because this is where he had grown up, and this is the community that he loves. So with that, pushing forward, I then got to hear his stories of attending Schwegler, Billy Mills, and Lawrence High School. My stepson himself, he went to West and Southwest Middle School and then started his high school career at Free State. He currently lives within a mile of where we do with his girlfriend and his 11-month-old daughter. So she is a prospective Deerfield student since Pinckney has closed. I am not only motivated by my family Since starting work here in Lawrence, I have worked in the restaurant industry, I have worked in retail, and I am currently working in the public health department. I have worked with students, I have worked with students and their families, and I am working with families and prospective students. I see how much education does matter for our families, and even if I don't have a kid in the school system right now, the children that are coming out still affect my life. They affect all members of the community. And education really does tie into quality of life. With the high tensions after the recent school closures, I was expecting to have a huge field of candidates. On the 11th of April, I got onto the county website to see who was running, and there was no one who had filed at that time. I'm happy to see much more people up here now. But that did make me go back and look at my life and determine, do I have the time to take this on? And I decided, yes, I have the time and desire to serve my community on the school board to make sure that our staff and students have the supports that they need to continue to thrive in this environment. I know with COVID, not only are the students struggling, but families are struggling as well. And we need to really help build the capacity to cope with change and to embrace the future as it is coming, and not just to dwell on the past. We need to be able to help our staff and our students deal with the trauma of COVID and other circumstances in order to move forward in their lives and be prepared for their future. And so that is why I'm running for the 4-year term.
Good morning. Thank you, everybody, for coming. My name is Brandon Moore. I'm running for the 4-year term. What inspired me to run was the teacher exodus and the school closings. There have been a lot of fantastic teachers that have left our district, and as somebody said before, it's not all financial related. I've been in the business world running restaurants for a little over 20 years, and one thing that has always helped me be successful is that we make sure every person that works for us is important, understood, and energized. And I'm not sure that we are doing enough as a board to make sure that our staff feels that way. So that was one of the main things that inspired me to run. Both of my kids have grown up mostly here. We moved back here in 2018, I believe. So we've done Billy Mills and LHS. My son just graduated and is unfortunately going to K-State. But I'm still proud of him, and I did wear a little bit of purple the other day, so it's not my color, but we're getting used to it. I'm looking to serve the underserved. We live on the east side of Lawrence, and those schools closing definitely affect a lot of students of color and people that are lower income. And one thing I really want to make sure that we're focusing on is equaling out the resources to the schools and focusing on the fine arts. I was a music ed major. Both of my kids are involved in theater, forensics, and debate. And funding has been cut there in all 3 of those areas, and we need to do everything we can to be able to support those areas, because significant studies have shown that that improves test scores, it improves retention in schools, and it'll definitely help us improve the overall culture within our school district, which hopefully with that can also improve the culture for the teachers as well. Thank you guys so much for showing up.
Bojo Manowabin, good morning. This is Carol. Good morning. I am Carol Cadu Blackwood. I am a current Board of Education member, and I am seeking the 4-year seat. But firstly, I would like to thank the Lawrence Douglas County Democrats, and I would like to express my condolences to Hank Booth and his family, as he was a dear friend and an icon and a legend of Lawrence. First off, I grew up in Lawrence. I think I'm probably the only one up here that's been here as long as I do. It's kind of embarrassing, but we moved here in 1978. I'm the first Board of Education member to have attended Lawrence Public Schools K through 12, and I hold a degree, associate's degree from Haskell, Indian Nations University, a bachelor's from the University of Kansas. I majored in political science with a minor in Spanish, and I have a master's in social welfare degree with a clinical focus. But yeah, I grew up in Lawrence. This is where I met my husband in high school. We met in Intertribal Club of all places, and I told my kids, like, that's not where you want to meet your spouse, is Intertribal Club in high school, because it's a tough road. But we have 3 adult children. They all attended Lawrence Public Schools, and 2 of them are attending Lawrence Haskell Indian Nations University. And I grew up with a background in service. My dad, who is here, just wave, Dad. My dad was our tribal chairman for 30-some years, and he was an Air Force veteran, and my husband is Army veteran. So it's my time to serve. But during my volunteer work at the Willow Domestic Violence Center, I realized that I could do more for my community, and as an Indigenous person, our culture and our beliefs is that we give back. And so the school board is the best opportunity to provide where I thought I could, provide some gaps in services, where I saw that I encountered, especially when I worked towards rededicating the name of Billy Mills Middle School. That's the first middle school in America to be renamed after a Native American, let alone living. And as a Board of Education member and Indigenous social worker, my family's religious and cultural beliefs were reaffirmed by the recent Holland versus Brecking Supreme Court decision, and where our belief system is that if something should happen to, say, my sister or my brother, and if they have children, then I would be the stewards of their children or guardians. And so we were elated by that. But by that belief, I have a niece who is attending Lawrence High School, so in our Indian ways or beliefs that she is my daughter. And then I have a incoming freshman grandniece, and by our beliefs, she is my granddaughter. So it's I have to explain the cultural beliefs of how we work. And then I have 2 grandchildren who I consider at Prairie Park Elementary. But I would like to continue my work and support the Kansas versus Gannon decision, where it was specifically cited in the Roe Standards number 5 that schools must support the grounding in arts to enable them to support their culture and historical heritage. But I was motivated to seek re-election as there's been an attack on our vulnerable populations and overt legislation to dismantle public education. I have advocated at the State House against vouchers and met with lawmakers to look for solutions to bring industry to Kansas. I am a proud 6th-generation Kansan. I love Kansas, but I'm not sure if it loves me as much as I love it. I would like to continue to work to end syndemic problems that are creating barriers and look for solutions by working and collaborating with the city and county government. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is G.R. Gordon Ross. I'm running for one of the 4-year seats. I'm a current board member. I would also like to thank the Douglas County Democrats for hosting the forum, giving us an opportunity to share a little bit about ourselves and our vision for the school board. Would also echo the condolences to the family of Hank Booth. Hank was a wonderful man. I had several opportunities to meet with him and talk about the school board, talk about scouting, talk a little bit about fireworks, and he was a huge loss to our community. A little bit about me. I moved to Lawrence in 1996 to attend the University of Kansas. I graduated with a doctorate of pharmacy degree. My wife and I have 5 children, all a product or soon-to-be product of Lawrence Public Schools. 3 have graduated from Lawrence High School. This coming year, I'll have a senior and a sophomore. I've served on the board for a little over 4.5 years. I've served a 4-year term from 2018 to 2021. And then last fall was reappointed to the board to the vacant seat left by Andrew Nussbaum when he moved to Portland. As part of that reappointment process, I committed to run in this election. Well, that's not really the reason why I'm running. I had committed to run in this election anyway. Public education is part of who I am. When I was in junior high, my mom ran for school board in a small little town of Kearney, Missouri. And she ended up being elected. She was the first woman ever elected to that school board, and she served 2 terms. And probably one of the greatest regrets of my life was I never actually went and watched my mom serve on that board. I was in junior high. I was 14. I was like, what do I care? But looking back on it, that would have been an amazing experience to be able to see that. And she taught me the value of public education. I'm a product of public education. My wife is a product of public education. But specifically, my children are a product of this public school system. I have watched amazing staff look at my children and see their potential and draw it out of them and prepare them for life. And I am committed to do that for every single student within this district. Back in 2018, when I first got on the board, we created a strategic plan and we started to implement it, and then COVID hit us and completely derailed what we were trying to do, and we never got to finish that work, and we're just now starting to try and get it back on track. And I'm running for re-election to go back to that equity work, that achievement work that we started in 2018, and to try to finish that work. That's why I'm running to work to help every student in our district achieve their personal potential to succeed in life outside of when they leave our walls and our protection. Thank you. Gio Gordon-Ross, I'm running for the 4-year seat. I would appreciate your support. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Coronado. I'm running for one of the 4-year seats, and thank you all for being here. I have 4 reasons that I'm running for this seat. Their names are Ephraim, Nathan, Thomas, and Elizabeth. Ephraim is my oldest. He's going into 2nd grade at Cordley Elementary, and it's a great school, but when we moved into our home, when we chose our neighborhood, we wanted them all to go to Kennedy Elementary, and we happened to move in a month after that school closed down. Part of what we've noticed and what we've really seen that's beautiful about this community is at Cordley Elementary, the way that the community values community, the way that the humanity of every single person is upheld, the way that equity and equality is pursued in every single avenue of life. And my work as a progressive Christian and a progressive pastor here in town drives me and my spouse to teach our children those very same values. It's because of my work as a progressive pastor that we teach our kids that trans rights are human rights and that Black lives matter and that the humanity of every single person around us needs to be upheld. And when I look at the community here in Lawrence, when I look at this beautiful home that we have chosen for ourselves, I see that those are values that Lawrence also holds high. And so I'm running for this seat because I want my children to see these values continue. I want these values to be upheld everywhere that there are people from the highest positions in the school district, down to a preschooler that's about to start at Kennedy Early Childhood Center in August. My reasons for running are a lot more than just my 4 kids, but I think my 4 kids, I know my 4 kids are what really represent what those values mean, and I hope I have your support. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Shannon Kimball. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a 12-year member of the USD 497 Board of Education, and I am the current president of the board. I am running for the 2-year unexpired term, which is the race that has the primary on August 1st. I'm a parent, first and foremost, of 3 children. My oldest just graduated from Free State and will be attending KU this fall. I have a rising sophomore and a rising 6th grader. 2 of my 3 kids have received special education services in USD 497. I first ran for the board in 2011 because I care deeply about our students, our community, and public education. And that has not changed at all during my 12 years on the board. In fact, if anything, my resolve to be an advocate has strengthened over time. As I've watched our teachers and our public schools come under attack again and again and again at all levels, state, national, sometimes even local. I am a product of public education. Public education changed my life as a young woman from a very poor rural community in western Kansas. I want to make sure that all of our students have those same opportunities to have amazing teachers, to inspire them, to guide them, to help them become everything that they want to become and follow their paths in their lives. I'm invested in this community and in our schools, so much so that I've taken every opportunity I could over the last 12 years to learn from our teachers, our families, and our students. I have worked very hard to build my skills and my knowledge as a board member. I've invested in impacting education policy at the board level on all the issues that have been mentioned at the table that we all care about very deeply, supporting our marginalized students, anti-bullying, supporting our teachers, all of those things. I've invested in that work through my policy work on the board. I've led our policy committee and our legislative agenda setting process for the Board of Education. I've worked very hard to impact education policy at the state level through serving on the Kansas Association of School Board of Directors for 6 years. I served a year as statewide president. I served 2.5 years as past president of that association, which meant that I led their legislative agenda setting work for the past 3 years. I've testified repeatedly in front of the Kansas legislature on issues that impact our students and our staff. I've worked to impact education policy at the national level. I served 4 years on the National School Board Association Policy Committee, as well as 2 years as a director on the National School Board Action Center Board of Directors. And all of this work, all the things that I've done in Lawrence as a board member at the state and the national level have all been focused on trying to make sure that we are directing as much support as possible to improving public education for the benefit of our students and our families in USD 497. I thank the community for the opportunity to do this work for so long. It's work that I love and is some of the best work I've done as a professional and a public servant, and I hope that I can earn your vote in the primary on August 1st. Thank you very much.
Okay, my name is Justine Burton, and I'm running for a 2-year seat on the board, school board. The reason I'm running, I guess I really got tired of complaining to myself and not being able to get anything done, so I thought I'd figure out, I'd find a different approach to that so I could get some answers. I graduated from Lawrence High. I'm original Lawrenceian. Been here the majority of my life. And I have a grassroots nonprofit organization that I started in 2008. And it's Stopgap Inc. And I work with kids that age out of the foster care system and also other at-risk youth. So I don't have any grandkids or children in the school district, but the way I look at it, for me, I look at all these kids are my kids because they are all at risk, actually, I think, of getting the best education that they can get. So that's what I want to do. I'm here to try to look at some changes that we can make, get away from the status quo, and be able to talk more to the community, find out what people want, what they're looking for their children, and then go from there. But I feel that now is the time for change, and that's what I want to be a part of, that change. So I'm short and sweet, that's it.
Would you join me in welcoming all of our candidates with some applause? Thank you. I can get that. Thanks.
We were all worried which one was
I know. Well, we have a couple of questions we'd like to hear your thoughts on. And the first one is regarding school closure, because school closures have introduced some very big barriers to accessing public school and attending them regularly every day on time, right? And there's a lot of fear in our community about privatization efforts and about commercialization going on in public education in general, but also locally. And we wanted to ask if you support the introduction of charter schools in USD 497, why or why not?
Okay, my name is Ann Costello again. So I just want to start off by saying I served on the Futures Committee where we were presented with a lot of data, but not necessarily all of the data. And I admit, I initially voted in favor of closing a school, but knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have voted that way. We didn't pick the schools that were targeted for closure. And when you distill a building down to numbers on a page, a lot gets missed. I mistakenly believed that from an equity perspective, not all schools targeted would be in one particular area. And it's hard to ignore the impact to the marginalized populations as a result of these closures. 80% of Pinckney students were Title students, 40% of Broken Arrow students received free and reduced lunches. So I spoke at the board meetings when public commentary was there, and I said that I no longer supported this. So I just want to be honest and transparent about where I've been with that. But in general, I do not support the introduction of charter schools. Charter schools typically have come about when schools are failing, and our schools are not failing. Sorry. So charter schools would further reduce our student enrollment, which would then further reduce the school funding that we have, and we are already a cash-strapped district. Research has shown that charter schools are not any better necessarily or any worse at educating students. The results have been mixed at best. What we need to do is reverse the decline in enrollment. It is vital to our district. Montessori and magnet schools can only do so much, but they can't offset the lack of affordable housing. So be it board members working with the city commission or in some other form, the district and the city must work together regularly to develop strategic initiatives with the goal of driving and bringing more families into the district. That is the only way that we're going to continue to survive.
Again, I'm Rachel Stumbling Bear. She said everything beautifully. Again, I want to say I also do not support charter schools. Those are typically independently run with their own governing boards, and depending on the state, depends on whether or not they can even be a part of a public school district. But I think that having a public school board and a governing board for a specific school is just going to cause too many issues. Besides the fact, as Ann pointed out, historically, their academic progress is up and down. I do think the question of this premise is telling me that not everybody in the community understands about the Montessori program that is at New York Elementary. We often think of Montessori as private, but there are Montessori public programs. It's an instructional model, not necessarily a private school. I know that the Montessori at New York is still very, very new. A couple months ago, I ran into an old coworker. When we had worked together, she had had a baby. That baby is now in elementary school. And so as we were catching up, I found out she goes to New York. And I was like, oh, she's of the age that she would be in the Montessori program. How is that going? And she said that they love it. Her daughter is thriving. This is not her first child. An older child has gone to school and has struggled. So she is extremely happy with the Montessori program and the ability that they have to attend it. I think that what we see here with using the Montessori instructional model in one of our elementary schools is more innovation, working to reach a population of families and students where the traditional model has not helped them and has not worked, and trying to find a different way to help them to succeed and to be prepared as they continue on with skills and education. So I support innovation in our school district and trying new things, especially with us being focused on students and what their needs are. I do not support charter schools.
I think I might be the lone supporter here. I would only support charter schools if it was integrated into our district. And we can do that. It would be a benefit if we could have a school that was focused on STEM, for instance, or the fine arts. that is going to allow us to draw in more students from other areas. With the new legislature passing the law where we have open borders now, we can pull from the other communities. But again, it needs to be a program that is going to allow us to continue to grow our district, and it needs to be something that is under the umbrella of 497 and not completely separate. If it is a separate program, it won't work. We're a very tight-knit community. I like to say Lawrence is, I grew up in Eudora, and Lawrence is very much like Eudora, where everybody knows everyone. And we're going to make sure that we take care of our students, and we can't do that with a private company or a private governing board coming in. I would definitely like to see more utilization of some of these closed buildings if we're going to go that route, and adding additional Montessori schools so that we can continue to push that district, push our district to the future, and realize that we need to continually innovate and find ways to grow our population so that the more funding can come here. So it allows us to do more with our second question of the day, which is pay equity. So again, Brandon Moore, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Out of respect for everybody's time, I will echo exactly what Ann Costello and Rachel Stumblingbear have said, but I am not in favor of the introduction of charter schools into USD 497. I voted against it along with board members Andrew Nussbaum and Kay Emerson. But for that reason, as a longtime Lawrenceian, I have seen a lot of changes in Lawrence. Specifically in the side, I'm an East Sider. I went to Cordley Elementary. My son went to Cordley Elementary, K through 6, and my daughter went to Cordley K through 2 until she was denied my third daughter was denied a transfer to Cordley Elementary because just due to the fact that they couldn't accommodate her. So that time they told her, I was told that, well, my older daughter could go to Cordley, but my second daughter could go to Wakarusa. And so I was impacted by the closure of Wakarusa Elementary. But as Ann Costello has said, it's a sign of desperation. It's creative. I support it, and offered a quality education is a top priority for any parent. It's a dream to select your school, but this is not the route that I would choose as a board member for Lawrence. Thank you.
No, excuse me. No, I don't support charter schools in USD 497. 3 specific reasons would be that they divert funds from traditional public schools. They tend to serve a lower population of special education students, and their discipline tends to be more punitive based on research. And then to touch on Rachel's point about our Montessori program, based on the context of the question, alluding to that Montessori program, there's a lot of misconception about that program. It is a public Montessori program. When we first started it, it was the first public Montessori program in the state of Kansas. It serves those students inside the New York boundary. It is a free public Montessori program. Those students pay the same fees as any other elementary school student in Lawrence. If they qualify for free and reduced, those fees are adjusted accordingly. And so it is a Montessori program based on curriculum and is not a private school. And so it is innovation, as is the College and Career Center, as is the College and Career Academy, as is what the Liberty Memorial redesign will be. It is a way to innovate and to reach different populations of students where they are, so that we can find ways to help them reach their individual potential and to attract students from outside as we look to make Liberty Memorial a magnet school to attract students from outside, not a charter school, but a magnet school. Thank you.
Kevin Coronado, I do not support charter schools for a lot of the reasons that have been stated already. I think overarching, more and more studies are coming out, more and more research is coming out that all charter schools do is create a stand back to separate but equal, where we are taking public funds, we are taking what should be available to every single student and putting it into one single school. And as has been mentioned, that one single school runs like a private school with public funds and some private anonymous funding. And so I do not support charter schools. I do not support the privatization of our public schools. Again, that's part of why I'm running, is to make sure that public dollars stay in public schools, not in a place where students have to apply to go to and can be rejected based on simply, as GR mentioned, there not being enough sped services at that location. And so again, I do not support charter schools.
I absolutely do not support bringing charter schools to our community, nor do I support bringing them to the state of Kansas. Why not? Ultimately, and most importantly, they're bad for kids. They, like other choice options, vouchers, tuition tax credits, all of those voucher-like schemes, they harm kids' access to high-quality, equitable opportunities for their education. And I am going to continue to place my trust with our professional educators in our district who work within our public schools that are required to serve all of our students on whatever needs they have, regardless of their background, and regardless of their special education services needs and other low-income other factors that impact their learning. I have zero interest in privatizing or commercializing public schools, and our community should really have no fear whatsoever that there's any such agenda with the current sitting board members or with our administration. And in fact, I've spent a significant amount of time advocating against just such schemes at the state level and at the national levels through KASB and NSBA. I want to address just for a minute a couple of things that have been mentioned about school closures. When you look at the research about how do inequities show up in our schools, they show up through things like siloing our minority communities and our high needs kids in buildings that are under-resourced. That's not what we want to be doing in USD 497. In fact, one of the reasons for having the discussions we've had over the last couple of years is that we have scarce resources and we have to do a better job of using those resources to support the very students that we're talking about. We need to be sure that we have the resources available to drive toward where the greatest need is. Another issue that has come up is what is going to happen with the future of those buildings that we're talking about. I think it's important for the community to know that Pinckney is going to continue to be a school. In fact, in what I think is maybe an appreciated benefit to equity in our district, they've been moving this past month, our community connections programs into the building at Pinckney. Those are students who are 18 to 21 years old, who qualify for continued educational services, job coaching, and community transition support because they have IEPs, they need special education services. In addition, we have programs that serve students that have emotional and behavioral disabilities that require them to have some specialized classroom support, and we have a suspension alternative program. Over the years that I've been on the board, those programs have historically been first, they were at a building that's over near Holcomb Recreation Center that used to be the alternative school for our district. And then we moved them to East Heights. As difficult as the decisions the board has made have been this year, I think that it's something to celebrate that we are going to have a building space for some of our most vulnerable and high needs students that they can be proud of, that serves their needs, that is centrally located to the biggest community partners that we work with in those programs, which are KU and LMH Health. In addition, with Broken Arrow Elementary School, our Native American Student Services programs will be moving into space, which is attached to Billy Mills Middle School. So I think that there are some benefits to services to some of our high needs students and some of our populations that have not historically had that level of attention paid to their needs. And it's about balancing resources. We are continuing to struggle with underfunding from the state of Kansas. I proudly wear my fully funded special education pin because I have been doing work to advocate for that. It's probably not well understood that while the school finance formula has been fully funded under Governor Kelly, and much appreciation to her for her leadership on that, the legislature has continued to abdicate its responsibility to fully fund special education services in our state. In fact, this year, we will be receiving a lesser percentage of our costs for special education services than in any of the 12 years I've been on the board. It's becoming a crisis, not just in our community, but across the state, and it's impacting our ability to reinvest resources in all of the things that our district has prioritized to serve students. So there are a lot of competing factors that go into making decisions to reallocate resources in our district in a way that makes sense to support our students every day in every one of our buildings. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I have more questions than answers here. I would not support any kind of privatization for our schools. I look at, they're talking about the Montessori schools as well. I guess my question is, why is it that this education can't be applied to all children? That's a problem for me. What it also, and this is only my opinion, what it also says to me when they talk about privatization and commercialization of schools, that tells me that the district has failed their kids and they don't know how to back out of it. So I think that being able to go back to the board and look at some of the other areas, but as I say, for as kids, all kids should get the same education, no matter where they are, where they come from, what neighborhood they live in. All education should be applied equally to every child in this district. And that's the way I look at it.
I'll come get it. Thank you, everyone. We'll go back to the front of the table and repeat the question just a little. Concerns about privatization, magnet charter, etc. What do you support?
Since I haven't talked in a while, I'm EJ Gonzalez again, so I just want to make sure you guys remember. But no, I do not support any kind of charter school, echoing what everybody has said around this table. One of the more important things for me is the special education aspect of everything. When you have a charter school or anything like that, it's not as regulated as what we have in our public schools. So the type of education that those people get, if they get it at all, is very minimal. So we would need to make sure that we were taking care of those aspects. As a parent of a special needs child, that is very, very important to me. If any of you have special needs children, you know the amount of stress that kind of goes into just having them and understanding their own superpowers, right? And for my individual children that have these issues, they are special to me in more ways than one. And I know everybody that is in that aspect, in that spectrum, or whatever you want to say, are special to me as well. So I want to make sure that they're always looked out after. So that is why I do not support charter schools in this district. Thank you.
I also do not support charter schools. I know we are desperate for change and transformation in this district, but charter schools are not a guarantee of success. There is not data that shows they perform better than public schools, and charter schools can cherry pick students. They do not have to be accountable to the Board of Education. They can have private entities running the show and pulling the strings. And one thing we don't need more of is less transparency. I think it is wrong to view public schools as inherently wrong or flawed and to present charter schools as the solution. Our schools struggle because they are underfunded, under-resourced, our teachers and staff are underpaid, and it's been this way for a long time. Public schools have been deprived of the resources, and I think we can implement innovative and creative solutions without strings attached, without funneling our public dollars to private entities. The most recent study put out a few weeks ago from Stanford was the first study in decades to show that charter schools had any advantage over public schools, and the study's main claim to fame was that charter schools produce higher test scores, but by the way, that increase was teeny, teeny, tiny. And the study was funded by the Walton Foundation, which is one of the 3 main billionaire foundations that want to privatize public education. So I take that study with a grain of salt. I also don't believe test scores can be used to prove a school's success. I believe education to be a public good and that public dollars should go to public schools with transparency and community input. And my only concerns with the Montessori program specifically are about equity and access, especially at the elementary school level. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jody Meyer again. Sorry, without glasses, I can't see anything. When we're talking about the charter schools, it sounds like the answer that everybody is giving is talking about private charter schools. There's also public charter schools, and I don't think that's a good way, public or private. You know, I think the question that we have to ask is, why are people wanting other schools, whether it's charter schools or they move from Lawrence? It's because they think that our public education system is not good enough or is lacking in a lot of areas, right? That's why they're looking for those things. And when we talk about charter schools, I think that's what parents think they're gonna get. I don't think it's a good idea. I'm a big supporter of public education. I wanted my children to be in public education. You know, during COVID, we lost a lot of families because of the decisions of the school board. And I kept my children here, even though for my youngest son in particular, the online school was a terrible experience. The other part of that question relates to the commercialization aspect. When we adopted the Montessori model over there in New York, I had my head in the sand about that, right? I mean, I didn't have a kid that young. I wasn't sure what it was about. When I went and researched it and looked at it, I mean, the quotes from Dr. Lewis in the paper were that we're doing this as a way to attract students to the district and help increase enrollment. And I think that's kind of the impression that I get when we're talking about making Central into a magnet school. Now, is that what is going to increase our enrollment in Lawrence? I mean, I would argue to you that I don't think that it is. I think the timing of it is always interesting. It feels to me more like the Montessori for New York was, you know, sort of thrown as a bone to the families who are losing their elementary school. The idea of Central as a magnet school seems like a bone that's thrown out there because we're going to move those kids to different elementary schools. You know, the Montessori method, and I know people love it. We've got a couple Montessori schools in Lawrence who are very successful. You know, there's actually not a lot of research overall the time about Montessori schools about how effective that is. There was a recent U.S. News and World Report article in the last 5 years talking about the effectiveness of Montessori and the causation or correlation between success. Some say it's really good with young kids, not so much for older kids. And according to news articles, we're talking about making that a Montessori school up to 6th grade at some point. Look at the projected enrollment. We're projected to lose students over the next 5 years at the middle school and high school levels particularly. So we're creating programs that are they gonna go to that? Now I recognize that the New York community needs that, and maybe they want that. But is that attracting people who go to Raintree Montessori? No, I don't think so. Is that attracting families who are moving into town and living in West Lawrence? I don't think so. You know, the idea about a magnet school at Central, let's say it's STEM, for example. Is that gonna make kids in Lawrence wanna go to that elementary school? I mean, I doubt it. My 2 older children going to KU are STEM majors, for example. And if I had suggested in middle school going to a magnet school for that, they wouldn't have done it. They want to be with their friends and whatnot. You know, the idea of a fine arts magnet sounds great. We have had excellent fine arts programs in Lawrence. My oldest son was involved in the fine arts programs. And they are great at the high school level and at the middle school level, and even at the elementary level. You know, are kids gonna want to go to a magnet school for that? I mean, I question that. So I just don't know why we're not making our local schools better, curing the problems that are there, because I think that's what's gonna bring people in. And that's what should bring people in, as an improvement in those areas. Thank
Would you all join me in a round of applause for all of those answers? Thank you. Okay, hang on to that. So we're gonna switch gears a little bit, and you might have seen this in the papers this week too. In our school district, for the last few years, say compared to 20 and 30 years ago, we don't have continuity in leadership in the building level. And just this week, even more principals have either moved schools or left the district. You know, sometimes you can see the plaques inside the school, right? Like Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so, they were here as the principal for 27 years or something like that, right? And instead we have a lot of flux in our workforce. The classified staff union indicated that they have turnover of around 20% or so every year, and current school board members might have a better number, so please correct me. But I think that's a lot. And it would be helpful for us to hear your thoughts on how we can stabilize the workforce. And as it's already been mentioned, it's not just pay. And I do want to say thank you to the current school board members who did work with the teachers and get them through that contract process. And also our classified staff got a $3 an hour raise. However, they are still $3 under a living wage, right? That living wage is another $3 an hour away for our lowest paid classified staff. So we'd like to hear your thoughts on stabilizing the workforce overall and supporting everybody that's at the building level.
So as was stated, I think the first thing that we need to do is continue the great work that was done by both sides of the negotiating table this year. With both of our unions, we were able to provide some significant impact to wages for both the certified and classified union, and that was the work done by both the union and the district. And so one of the ways to stabilize employment is to continue that work moving forward, because that is not definitive or ending work. That is simply stepwise work in the right direction, because a living wage continues to be a moving target. When Powell CWA was first created, when that union was formed several years ago, their target was $15 an hour, and now it's $16 an hour because of inflation and economic changes, and I anticipate it will continually be a moving target. And so continuing to work with those unions and the needs of their membership will always be a constant moving target, and that work will never be done. So beyond wages, I think the other thing, something else that we can do is we have a lot of problems in our district. Let's just put it out there. Nobody thinks we're perfect. That's why we're all up here, because we see issues, we see flaws, we see problems. And we have a lot of qualified, experienced, exceptional staff members that have solutions to those problems. And we need to find ways and mechanisms to bring those staff members to the table and engage them in helping solve those problems. I think sometimes we forget that we have 1,600 problem solvers at our fingertips that we can utilize to bring to the table, ask, here's the problem, here's the parameters in which we can work with to solve this problem, how would you solve it? And if we can do that, we can help staff feel more engaged, more valued, and we can then help them buy into the solution that is then implemented. And I think lastly, we need to also think outside the box in providing solutions and ideas that are not directly tied to salary in recruitment and retention, as we look at different benefits and different things that we can do, as we look at little things like how we handle leave buyback, or how we handle other things that are just things that we can tweak or that we can do that can incentivize. And directly addressing building leadership. As you look historically over the district, historically, until about 2 years ago when we made some specific administrative cuts, there were 2 positions in the district. There was a director of elementary principals and a director of secondary principals. And those 2 administrative positions specifically existed to help support principals. They were administrators that were on the ground in the buildings directly supporting principals and their roles. And in talking to principals, what they did was they allowed principals, they gave them a single source to go to when they had issues, when they had problems. They existed in their buildings, and in some ways they allowed principals to act somewhat autonomously in how they implemented education for their individual building populations. Part of our administrative cuts was we cut those 2 positions, and it forced us into a world where we had to streamline and make some of our programs at our buildings more cookie cutter and more the same. And some of that support for principals shifted up the chain to more district level administrators that already had other things on their plate, and some of our building principals lost the support that they directly had in their buildings. And some of that shift, that secondary shift from some of those administrator cuts, have played into a cultural shift that the state of our district has changed from what some of those principals saw when they first got hired. That has led to some of this turnover.
I've had the privilege of working in organizations where I personally handled tens of millions of dollars worth of assets and investments. I have been able to lead teams as big as 100 people, which I know is a drop in the bucket to 1,600 in the school district. But I've also consulted with dozens of organizations, from as small as 2 staff people to as large as several hundred. And 2 things keep coming up have come up over the years whenever we talk about employee retention and stabilizing staff, as is kind of the topic here. The first one is pay. Are people being paid a living wage is, I think, the way that we say it nowadays. The answer here in USD 497 for our lowest paid workers is no. And it took them 8 years to get to $13 an hour. So we need to first fix that gap and make sure that all of our classified staff, everybody that is working for the school district, is not worried about whether or not they can pay their bills and whether or not they have to take a second job or even a third job in some instances in order to provide for their families. The second thing that comes up over and over again is how supportive is leadership. It's no secret that we have seen several different employees across the district, not just leave the district, but then also put out opinion pieces and articles and take interviews in the local media, talking about why they're leaving. From experience, people don't do that when they're happy with where they're going. And people don't do that when they're happy with the leadership that they're leaving behind. So I think that there are 2 specific things that we have to address. Again, the first one here is making sure that all of our staff, all the people that are caring for our kids, that are caring for these buildings that we so much love, making sure that they're taken care of. But then also, as GR mentioned, making sure that every single level of leadership, from the para-educator that is making sure your kids get to and from lunch safely, to the local school principals, making sure that every single person knows that this administration that this board has their back, not just in word, but in actual deed. That's how we stabilize the current workforce, and that's also how we become a place, again, where teachers that are graduating college from K-State and KU, and even, hey, I know a couple of teachers from the University of Houston where I grew up, where people are saying, I want to go work there because I know that I'm going to be taken care of.
So I know you probably can't read it because the print is tiny, but I'm also wearing a button today that says, you can't put students first if you put teachers last. That has been a laser focus of my work as president of the board this past year, in putting our teachers and our classified staff first in our decision making as a way to support our students and our families. I think I want to do something a little different with this question. I want to contextualize this question within the broader picture of what is going on in public education statewide and across the nation. So when Melinda introduced the question, she mentioned, historically this is what we have seen. I think it's important for our voters to know that our district is actually beating national trends on building leadership retention at this point by a lot in some cases. I want to acknowledge and thank a number of our building leaders for their many years of continuous service. We have 3 buildings that are being led by the same principal that's been there since before I joined the board in 2011. We have another 3 buildings that have had, another 4 buildings actually that have only had a couple of building leaders during that time, and 4 more buildings that have only had 3 building leaders during that time. So that's about 50% of our schools that have had pretty consistent, long-serving leadership over the course of my service on the board. Now, when you look at national averages for principal and building administrative turnover, before the pandemic, the average tenure of a K-12 principal was 4 years. Since the pandemic, that average has gone down to just over 2 years. So, we like to think of ourselves as special and unique in Lawrence, and we are in many ways, but that's the labor market that we are working in as a district when it comes to building leadership. So I think it's actually a good sign that over half of our buildings have had consistent leadership that's been here longer than those national averages over the last dozen years. Moreover, there's been a lot of mention of our teacher turnover and administrative turnover. Our rate of administrator turnover is down year over year this year, and our teacher turnover coming out of the pandemic is down by almost 20%. So the steps that we have taken as a district and as a board to work on these issues of teacher recruitment and retention are in fact working. My individual vision for this issue going forward is to continue to work our strategic plan goals around effective and effective employees. We need to continue the work to attract and retain those high-quality candidates in all of our employee groups. That work has included efforts to ask the employees in our district what they need from us to feel engaged and to keep them here. And I will tell you that they have told us in those surveys that pay is the biggest issue. So I'm really excited that we have listened to what our staff is telling us, and on Monday night, when the board meets, we are going to be asked to approve the contracts that have been negotiated with both of our employee unions, and those contracts are going to represent historic wage increases, both for our certified and our classified staff. With these proposed wage increases, 68% of our classified staff in our district will be making at least $15 an hour. That has been a goal for the board and the district during the term of our strategic plan, so the last 4 years. And we have made significant progress this year on achieving that goal. All of our classified employees are getting a raise. Our 8 most common classified staff positions, which include most of our paraprofessional instructors, their average entry-level wage is going up to $14.77 an hour. It's not quite $15. It's not $16 or $17, depending on your definition of a living wage, but it is substantial progress. It's a 21% increase over where we were a year ago. So these are significant moves to the positive for all of our employee groups, and that is a sustained focus that I have had as a board member and I will continue to have going forward, because we need to keep working on this issue. As GR mentioned, the target continues to move, and we have to continue figuring out ways to reinvest resources into these areas so that we can retain the teachers that we love and retain the building leaders who are effective, and make sure that all of those things are there for the benefit of our students and their learning. Thank you.
Okay. These individuals, they keep the schools and stuff maintained. They make sure that when people are coming to school, administrators, et cetera, coming to school, that all the sidewalks and stuff are clean. They strip, wax, buff floors, empty trash. This is not something that's should be minimized. These people make administrators look good. And for me, $3 increase is an insult to these people. If you're gonna make $15 an hour, that should be your entry level for somebody that doesn't maybe have the skills. You have people that have probably been in these jobs for many, many years. This is unacceptable. This is not saying thank you to these people. Teachers should be able to have not only a living wage. When you say living wage, that could mean just about anything, but living wage to me means, you know, you're able to pay your bills, take care of your kids, buy your kids clothes, pay all the fees that you have to pay for them to be able to go to school and participate in activities. Some of these people, they spend their time probably more or less at the school as opposed to being with their families as well. So when they have activities and stuff in school, these people have to be there to make sure, late at night, to make sure that school is clean in the morning for normal activities. So I just think it's an insult. And I think that this district can do better than what they're doing. I think where they apply their money, I think they could probably look at some place else. The way I look at it, some administrators, I think they should be able to prove themselves just as much as they want the staff to do. I think that administrators, as far as getting raises, I think they should stop. I mean, until they do their job. I think they should put maybe a freeze on administrative salaries until they can do their job. And these increases, it should go toward the people that is really doing the work, the teachers and the staff in these schools.
So the question is stabilizing the workforce. And I should have mentioned this earlier. Currently in Douglas County, for a single individual person, the living wage is a little over $16 an hour. And then for one adult with 2 children, the living wage is a little over $18 an hour. And that is based on rent, as cheap as you can get it, food, as cheap as you can get it, right? But those are the current numbers generally based on housing, food, et cetera.
So hearing about the raises that are happening, it is a good thing that they are getting in it, but it's too little too late, in my opinion. As somebody who has had to live paycheck to paycheck, when you get a raise that is the minimal amount of raise to get, and it doesn't do anything to improve your life. As somebody that supplies for a house of 6, I'm telling you that where we currently live in inflation and rent and gas and everything like that, $3 an hour is nothing. It's absolutely nothing. And these teachers are still going to have to come to us parents and ask for those bare minimum supplies, glue sticks, colored pencils, markers. They should not have to beg the parents for supplies. The district should be able to provide that. And when we have top-heavy administrators who are making more than most administrators do in other districts, we should be demanding them showing their leadership to supply that money downhill. As somebody that I actually supervise 12 individuals in an IT firm in Kansas City, and my wife, who's standing in the back, is going to learn of this for the first time. But I actually got a bonus of $500 for our performance that we did. My wife did not get a single dollar. My family did not get a single dollar. My people got all that money. I sent them money through Venmo, through PayPal, whatever they had. Because if it wasn't for them, I would not have gotten that bonus. We see our administrators continuously get bonuses and pay raises, and they go off and they get to have their nice vacations, their nice houses, a steak dinner. But our teachers don't get that. And that is a shame, especially since we continuously ask our teachers to do more. Class sizes are increasing. We ask them to stay late to do more. Ask them to buy their own decorations for their classrooms. I know if it was me, I wouldn't be doing that. Because if I have leadership that is not standing behind me, why would I want to put forth that effort? There's zero transparency currently with this administration. We shouldn't have to sit up here and have to explain to you why there's the benefits of closing schools. You all should already know that. But we don't. Anyone in our community doesn't know that right now. We need to hold our leaders more accountable. We need to hold ourselves more accountable in the school board. And we need to be more transparent. Thank you.
My vision for stabilizing the workforce is getting our classified staff to a living wage, and for a single person family, that would mean committing to an additional $3 raise at the negotiation table for classified staff. Our students and teachers and schools suffer when the classified positions go unfilled, and I believe there are over 100 classified staff positions that are just chronically unfilled. To get to that most recent raise, it took the union organizing and fighting for 8 years. It was not handed to them. They fought, and I think that shows we can accomplish amazing things if we work together. If we take care of our school workers, everyone in this community wins. Our teachers are taking on massive amounts of work and get paid $15,000 less than a neighboring district 30 minutes away. I've met teachers from Kansas City who said they would love to live in Lawrence and teach here, but they were both teachers and they just could not take that pay cut. I think integrity and leadership would also go a long way in stabilizing things here. Our teachers, principals, and staff are leaving for reasons beyond pay, and I think it's obvious they aren't being heard or supported enough. I think we need regular public town halls where we listen to staff and teachers tell us what they need to really thrive in their jobs. We need thorough exit interviews. We have to do the work to prevent the departures, and that means creating a culture where the staff feels comfortable speaking to the board and the board welcomes the input.
I'm Jody Meyer again, last. Hope everybody still's got their ears open. I guess the question is initially addressed in the email was about the continuity and leadership in the buildings. And while I appreciate the national average about turnover, what I'm concerned about is, sorry, thank you, is how that impacts us locally. I went back and looked at leadership in my kids' schools. My kids went to Broken Arrow. We had the same principal the entire time that my children were there. And I can't tell you how great that was for continuity, especially because during that time period, we also had the Wakarusa Valley parents come in from when their school was closed. And that's even more important because that's really a traumatic process for everybody involved when kids from a closed school have to come in. It's emotionally difficult for all the way around. But when I look at, for example, Lawrence High School, in the last, I can't remember if it was 6 or 7 years that my kids have started to where I'm at now. We're now this fall going to be on our 4th principal, and I think 2 of those years were years where someone wasn't called interim, okay? And middle school level, my kids at Billy Mills, in that 7-year period, we've had, 3 principals. Repeatedly, what my teacher friends talk about is lack of support, administrators who aren't in the building, administrators who don't answer emails, administrators who ignore disciplinary issues. That's another factor in teachers leaving, for example. I mean, money is one thing. The recent raise increase was great. That has kept some people here who are going to leave. I had a special education teacher friend here who was going to go to Ottawa. We got the raise, now she's staying. But people are leaving for other reasons. And what these folks tell me is how they're treated. They don't want to be micromanaged in their classrooms. They want to be able to teach. They don't want some curriculum director telling them what they can and can't do. They want to be treated fairly they want administrators who are there for them. I'm a pretty straight shooter. And for example, we had an administrator at the secondary level who, quite frankly, was extremely abusive to staff and other people for 3 years. And people directed it to human resources. These things went on deaf ears, and several highly respected and qualified teachers left. I mean, that's the type of thing that has been going on. And this was going on pre-COVID. This is not just a COVID thing. I mean, it's pre-COVID. So these are the things that have not been dealt with by the school board and as a district. And quite frankly, and I hate to say this because I think the last thing I need to suggest is another administrative position, but I do think that we need an ombudsman office, a neutral third party where we can have complaints, somebody who is selected by, say, the board, not the administration, who can help deal with problems either by staff, parents, students, the like, to deal with that, because people do not feel comfortable going to the administration. I consistently have heard that they're worried about retribution, even if they change to a different school. This is all consistent, and this is impacting the quality of life. So, the other factors, there are factors beyond our control as to why people leave. A very good Lawrence High teacher left because Mill Valley called him and said, we want you, and they could pay more. Or somebody's going to Washburn Rural, or that sort of thing. I mean, the high cost of living in Lawrence keeps people from staying or leaving. Those things are beyond our control. But there are definitely things that are in our control that have not been dealt with and that we do have the power to do something about.
Sorry, I didn't mean to leave Ann out. I couldn't remember. There's a few more of us still left to go. Ann Costello again. So nationwide, we are facing a crisis in teachers. Few college students are choosing to become teachers, and attrition is on the rise. Teachers are not just leaving their schools or their districts, but the entire profession altogether. Staff instability directly impacts our student achievement. This problem is not unique to teachers. School leaders are also leaving at higher rates. This makes it all the more important that we focus on retention and recruitment. And in order to do this, we need to address the working conditions and other factors that are prompting teachers to quit and dissuading people from entering the profession altogether. Low pay, challenging school environments, coupled with a need for more recognition and professional development all make it hard to recruit and retain great staff. We need to offer competitive pay and a living wage for our classified staff. This means digging into the budget to see where we can find potential savings. The ability to fund contingency positions that would allow us to plug in teachers in order to lower class sizes would also be helpful. I've heard directly from some teachers that they would appreciate lower class sizes more than they would actually a raise. Their effectiveness as a teacher decreases when they're in a classroom with 30 or more students. And hopefully by paying a living wage, we can increase the number of pairs we have in classrooms that would also provide support as well. But as many people have said, money isn't everything. Culture is very important. I have stayed at my job. I haven't had a raise since 2017, but it's the people that I work with that make it worthwhile. So in addition to salary and class size, we need to provide greater supports for mental health. We need to create outlets for teachers, staff, and school leaders to be able to ask questions and voice concerns without fear of repercussions. We need to foster collaborative and positive cultures in our schools and the ESC. The district conducts surveys of their staff. What are the schools with more happier, satisfied staff doing that we could take and learn from and implement in other schools? Workloads also need to be reviewed. What are teachers and staff doing that doesn't directly impact our students and their learning? Can any of it go away? Lastly, student behavior has become more challenging to manage post-pandemic. We need to provide the supports to teachers and staff to help them. Are there resources that we can provide parents or the community at large in support of this endeavor? Thank you.
My name is Rachel Stumbling Bear. I know when I hear a lot of people talk about they want stability and they want continuity, and then they're equating those leaders as people who have been in that position for a long period of time. And I think there are pros and cons to that. A pro obviously is then you have a leader who knows the community, knows what's going on, can develop deeper relationships with students, parents, those around. But I think a con, especially in our public school system, where we've had to do budget cuts, is if you have somebody who's been in a position for 20, 25 years and then they retire, is there somebody who can fill in who also has developed those connections? So I think what we really are needing is to create a workforce that is balanced between people who have long experience working and then those who have shorter, or what we normally hear as young professionals. I am a graduate of the Kansas Leadership Center, and one of the pillars that they teach is leadership is an activity, not a position. They point out a lot, we have all had leaders who we don't think led very well. So I firmly believe that along with paying our staff adequately, fair and living wages, we also need to support them in their career ambitions. That includes meeting with them one-on-one, finding out what vision do they have for their current position and in the future. We need to, those who have a desire to go further in education, to become a principal, to become the director of curriculum, we need to help prepare them for that, so as those opportunities open up, we have somebody who is already established in our community who can move up into that position. I understand that we have turnover here. Every public sector job is. I'm in the health department. Healthcare is also having the same turnover. With COVID, everyone has been burned out, and especially essential workers. So I think it's even more important that we double down on the supports that we are giving and make sure that we are increasing the attention to detail for what staff need. It's not just the mental health of our students, but it's also the mental health of our staff. I think that by developing our long-term professionals and our younger professionals, that will create that stability in our workforce, and that it will also help create a funnel of future leaders to continue onwards when our older ones retire.
I'm gonna go off script from what I wrote down. I agree with a lot of the things that are said, but Having been in the restaurant industry for over 20 years, it traditionally has the highest turnover out of any sector. In those 20 years, I have consistently won awards for the lowest turnover, typically under 100% when the national average is well over 120%. And frankly, we do that by taking care of our people. And unfortunately, in the restaurant industry, we don't pay a living wage. But what we do provide is an inclusive environment, an open dialogue with our team, and a path forward for the ones that want to continue to develop. Right now, we have hired multiple leaders for our district from the outside. What are we doing to develop those leaders internally? What are we doing to make sure that the next principal is somebody that's already within the school that these students have a relationship with? As somebody else had said earlier, we've had 4 principals at LHS alone, and the most recent one has been seen out of her office twice. That is not a leader, and yet we are continuing to hire those type of people. So what can we do differently to make sure we're hiring the right person? Because unfortunately, we're not doing that. And as a board, I'm sorry, but the school district board has failed our teachers. They don't feel supported, they feel overworked and underpaid. Obviously, there is a budget, and we have to stick within that budget. But what can we do to ensure that our people have a living wage? First and foremost, $3 an hour is insulting. We should have immediately taken them up to 16. We did multiple school closings, and we've done multiple cuts to the budget to be able to gain all of this money to 7 to 9 million, but yet we still aren't paying our people a living wage. That's absurd. The only way that we're going to see the change and to be able to make impact is to have a change with the leadership, not only with the administrative staff, but with the board that we have currently. This board is the reason why we're in the position that we're in, and we have to make change in order to see that. And hopefully some of us can bring new ideas and new wealth of experience to the board to be able to provide that change.
Thank you, Brandon. This is Carol. It's a habit. As a Board of Education member, I recognize that $3 an hour, it was a lot of work to get there. And I would like to get another opportunity to increase that to a quote-unquote living wage in Lawrence, Kansas. People are leaving. They are voting with their feet. They're leaving our district. They're leaving our towns. And with Panasonic coming, I am almost certain that we will potentially lose more of our students. And with that, I think that it would behoove the district and the city and the county to work together to seek the $1.6 billion surplus that Governor Kelly signed into the budget for the next 3 years. I think it would be lazy and irresponsible if we did not make those efforts. And I, as Citizen Jane here, will do my best to try and secure some of that funding for our schools and our town. But I recognize the dignity and the worth of our paraprofessionals and our facilities, our classified staff. And I know the struggle. I know the struggle of barely able to make it a living wage. My husband and I moved in with his parents because we simply couldn't afford to live in Section 8 housing because our rent increased. And so I know what it is to go out and go to food pantries and apply for low-income housing. And so I see that struggle, and I know that many of our paraprofessionals do have second jobs. And they are just like me. I was in those shoes where they're visiting pantries, and some of these individuals have told me that they slept in their cars. That is unacceptable. And I will do my best as a Board of Education member to look into every avenue to increase that wage. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you join me in a round of applause for all of our candidates? Real quickly, we'll let everybody give a 1 minute or less just a recap, their name, what position they're running for, and the top couple of things that these candidates would like to stick in your mind before you head to the polls. Would you mind going first? Finish. Thank you.
Again, my name is Justine Burton, and I'm running for a 2-year seat on the school board. As I sit here and listen to everyone talk, we all have, like I said, the things in mind. There's also things that should be changed. My focus is actually for school safety for kids. The bullying that goes on in schools. I was talking to a young man the other day, a 12-year-old young man, and I was asking him, school's getting ready to start again, how you feeling about that? And he was pretty apprehensive about starting school because he said last year in school he was called the N-word. These are things that have not been addressed here. These are things that affect how children learn. These are things that the board, top administration should be addressing. All this affects a child's learning, and this is something that should be taken care of. I'm looking at cohesiveness as well, across the board, being able to talk to individuals, especially students, about how they feel things are affecting him. Oftentimes you don't hear from the kids. You hear from adults, but you're not hearing from kids. I want to hear from the kids. What is it that they want? What is it that it's going to take for them to be able to be in school and be able to learn? That's where it starts at. But we sit here, we talk about a lot of things, but it's not actually the kids that we are addressing. We have issues of our own, but my focus is on the children. That's where it's going to be, and that's where it should be for everyone. Equity is another one. Make sure that, like I said, all kids, regardless of your background, of where you come from or who you are, should be getting the same education as anybody else. For me, nobody is better than anybody else. We all have to live and breathe. Some may have more money, but that does not mean that they're better than anybody. It just means they got more money. Inclusiveness is another thing. Being able to include everybody in everything and all the talks. I feel that the district has gotten complacent over the years, that there needs to be some change across the board. And like I said, the focus is on the children, should be on the children as well. And just as I say, in closing, as Ayakoka said, either lead, follow, or get out of the way.
Thank you all for sticking with us today. Appreciate your patience so that you could hear from all of the candidates. Again, my name is Shannon Kimball. I'm running for one of the two-year unexpired position on the board. All of the issues that have been talked about at the table in terms of wages, resources, student achievement, focusing on equity, focusing on student voice and student experience, those are all issues that I have worked on as a board member, that I want to continue working on as a board member. Experience and expertise matters in being able to effectively address those issues as a board member, and that is something that I bring to the table and I want to continue bringing to the table. We have accomplished a lot during the last few years in spite of a global pandemic and what have really been unprecedented impacts of that trauma on our students and our families that are showing up in our classrooms, and we have to continue to figure out how we are going to support our students and our staff to address that. But going forward, there are 3 things I really want to highlight that I'm going to work on. I want to build upon our progress that we've made on wages for our staff. That is hard work. It is not easy. It's not going to be easy to figure out how to rearrange resources to put more money into that when 85% of our spending is on wages and benefits. So it's possible to do it, but it takes a lot of hard and very focused work, and I am willing and capable and ready to continue doing that work. Something that we haven't touched on at all much today is the fact that the district is going to need to start working on re-upping our strategic plan. We've had a strategic plan, the first 5-year strategic plan in the district, thanks to work that I did when we were going through our superintendent search process in 2018. It's time for us to, as a board, to evaluate where we are with that and figure out, with the community's input and with our staff and students' input, what the next phase of that looks like through 2030. And then finally, I'm going to continue leading on equity on our board. I have written or co-written the board's equity policy, our equitable dress code. I have written or co-written changes to our anti-bullying and anti-discrimination policies to protect our minority students, to protect our LGBTQ students and staff. And I'm going to continue doing that work and leading in that area because it is absolutely essential that we take a stand to support those students and those staff in our districts and continue to move that work forward. I'm a proven, consistent, dedicated, and experienced member of this board, and I've been effective at the work that needed to be done to move forward all of the priorities that we've talked about. And I hope that I can earn your vote on August 1st and again on November 7th so that I can continue working on all of these issues on behalf of our students and our families and our community. Thank you very much.
I'm Kevin Coronado. I'm running for a 4-year seat on the school board. And simply put, there are 3 things that I want to focus on from the moment that I am elected to the school board in November before I'm even sworn in. The first one is making sure that every single one of our teachers and our staff know that we are behind them. That means getting them up to a living wage and then keeping them there as inflation goes up through the years. The second thing is making sure that every single student knows that we are behind them, that every single student knows that we are supporting them by making sure that we are staffing classrooms to the level that they need to be staffed at, which, as has been mentioned, won't be easy, but making sure that teachers have the support that they need inside and outside of the classroom, making sure that local school leadership knows that we are behind them. It is us with each other for these kids, and in doing so, our students will know that we care for them. The final thing that I want to make sure is that you, the public, know that we are on your side. It shouldn't take a forum put together, as grateful as I am, it shouldn't take a forum put together by community members so that you can make your voice heard. And so I will work to ensure that you have access to me personally outside of just school board meetings and an email that I can ignore if I so choose. And so in doing, I know that we will be able to rebuild the trust in the school district from the public. We will be able to make sure that our kids know that we love and support and care for them. And we will make sure that our classified staff, that our teachers, that our school leadership knows that we are on their side and we're in this together. My name is Kevin Coronado. Make sure to vote for me on November 7th.
Thank you for being here today. Gio Gordon-Ross, running for re-election in one of the 4-year seats. What I'd like to close with today is just a reiteration of my commitment to public education. over 4.5 years on the board, I have made an attempt to always make data-informed decisions that I felt were in the best interest of the district as a whole. I will continue to do that. I will continue to serve the students and staff of this district to the best of my ability and make those types of decisions. Specifically, what I would like to work on over the next 4 years would be 2 specific projects that come out of my work on the facilities committee. We're working on introducing solar into the district. Just on Thursday, we opened up the bids for our first ever solar project, and we're going to move that project forward. And then we're also working on a fiber network for our districts that will allow us to increase the internet speed. And then we're also going to take that internet speed and use it to extend the range of our wireless network to outside of our buildings by a considerable amount and blanket most of the city, so that students who live at home who don't have high-speed internet will have access to it on their school devices to work to close the digital divide. I want to remove barriers to how we get and receive feedback from both students and staff. Right now, we receive that feedback either online only, or if it is on paper, it has to be turned in at a district building. I believe those are arbitrary barriers that we can remove. Then, as Shannon talked about, as we relook at and revamp our strategic plan, I think that there was work that we could do at the district level as we look at the district leadership structure, district level committees. As we look at how we revamp the strategic plan, we could reorganize some of those committees and that hierarchy, so we're one cohesive unit moving forward, how that strategic plan is structured, so that we're all moving in the same direction to meet the needs of students and continue to work towards their success. I've been privileged to serve this community for 4.5 years, and I would be honored to have your vote again to continue the work that I've done on November 7th. Thank you.
Hi, this is Carol. I am seeking another term on the school board. One of the things that, I'm proud of, it's hard for me as an Indigenous person to stand up here or sit here in front of you and tell you about the things that I'm proud of, because we are raised to be humble, but one of I'm just gonna highlight a few things that I'm proud of. But I did question the use of thermal scanners during the pandemic and the use of them, the validity of the thermal scanners. They were proven to be ineffective, and I requested that the facial recognition software be removed from those thermal scanners, thereby keeping our students' identities and protecting their civil liberties. I advocated at the State House against vouchers for private schools or charter schools. I voted in favor of keeping us safe during the pandemic. The Douglas County Health issued a report in March that stated that Douglas County had one of the lowest death rates from COVID in the entire state of Kansas and the United States. There's no price tag on the price of a life, and I will stand by that vote. And I'm so proud to bring my dad here. He just turned 80, so I kept that in mind too when I voted to keep us safe during the pandemic. As we know, that during the pandemic, the ones that we lost to them were our elderly and the most marginalized, the vulnerable of the vulnerable. And also, sadly, in that report, it also reported that our Native American populations were hit the hardest. I also took to the streets with our LGBTQ trans students. I participated in the walkout, and I will continue to support our LGBTQ trans students as they are under attack both statewide and nationally. I advocated restorative justice at the city and state level. I was appointed by Governor Kelly to serve on the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Committee to promote restorative justice. I voted solidly against school closures. I will continue to, I guess as you will, I don't want a seat at the table, I want to continue to shake the table. But for me, equity does not include by leveling the playing field by closing schools in the most economically depressed areas. And that's one of the areas where I grew up, is where we are being impacted. But as a school board member, I will continue to work on the strategic plan. As my board member said, everything came to a halt or a standstill during the pandemic, but I would like to continue that work to enforce and support the Gannon versus Kansas decision, where our schools will teach accurate history and we can support our students and the students can see themselves in the curriculum. Thank you. And I also ask that you vote for the members of the Kansans United for Public Schools, Kevin Coronado, myself, Yolanda Franklin, and Ariel Miner. Thank you.
Again, I'm Brandon Moore, running for a 4-year seat. As a member of the LGBTQ community, I find it important that we stand up for the little guy. The underserved, unfortunately, were targeted during this round of school closures. And we have to make sure that we're able to provide the best support to those without a voice. After speaking to teachers and also Superintendent Lewis, I feel that we've lost our way with the plan forward, and it needs to be completely revitalized and changed, and that's one of the things that I'm going to take up as soon as elected. We talk about inclusivity a lot, but our actions don't match our words. And we need to take change in order for that to happen. Unfortunately, a lot of programs have been cut that have shown to increase test scores and increase graduation rates. And we need to make sure that we're doing our best to focus on all of the children and support them as much as possible. Our classified staff at $15 an hour is going to make roughly $31,000 a year. Our administrative staff is making well over $100,000 a year. A $70,000 disparity between our bottom and top is not acceptable. We are administrative heavy, and we are administratively heavy in dollars, and we need to focus on what we can do to reallocate those resources to the folks that are having the direct impact with our students. I hope to get your vote, and Brandon Moore, thanks.
Again, I am Rachel Stumbling-Bear. For the top 3 things I would like to work on, 1, I would like to work to focus on supporting staff, again, in their career ambitions and their development, as well as raising their wages to be competitive and a living one. I am a WIC clinic assistant, and so I see a lot of income information for people. I don't want to see staff from the USD 497 in my office. I also want to focus on connecting our students with civics, with the government. I talk to many of them, and they don't understand why voting is important, why getting involved by reaching out to speak up is important, and that they are a part of this community already, even if they haven't graduated. Their voices matter. And preparing them to know that they should be looking forward to getting to vote in the elections for school board, for city, for our county commissioners. These are the groups that really affect their lives, is local government. I also want to work on the communication with the community to help them to be transparent on what is happening, what is going on, not when things are unpleasant, but also when we are doing well in our school district, like our Farm 2 community. During the school closures, you can see on the YouTube count that we had like 5,000 people watching, but when the Farm 2 community presented, there was maybe 300 watching. So I want the community to know what good programs are happening to help our students as well. Again, my name is Rachel Stumbling-Bear. I am going for a 4-year term. I am ready and willing to serve a full 4-year term.
Again, my name is Ann Costello. I'm also running for a 4-year term. I want to thank the Douglas County Democrats for hosting and all of you for coming out. I really do, I truly appreciate it. And those of you taking notes, I love it. I'm a note taker myself. So as far as my priorities, as I kind of spoke to previously, one of the priorities would be increased support for teachers and staff. This means Not only salaries, but support for mental health, trying to reduce class size. Another priority of mine revolves around school finance and the budget. We need to demand that Topeka fund our schools. In no other job than the legislature can you actually not do what is legally required of you and have no consequences. When special education is not funded at the statutorily required level, we must take money from our general fund to cover the shortfall. We do not have the ability, and nor should we even consider not providing these services. The general fund dollars could have been spent, though, on additional wage increases if we weren't having to cover the shortfall in special education. Also, the work of the Futures Committee is not complete. We need to find more savings, not only in order to pay our teachers and classified staff more, but we also need to build back our reserves and be able to cover the rising costs of health insurance, liability insurance, and utilities. We've made progress on salaries, but obviously it's not enough. And last but certainly not least, we need to focus on student achievement. And in particular, we need to focus on closing the gap for students of color, students from low-income households, and students in special education. It's not enough that we raise achievement for all. We have to focus on this gap. There are several ways I think we can do this. First of all, parental involvement has a strong direct impact on student achievement. We need to foster close cooperation between schools and parents. I'm also excited about the new social emotional learning curriculum the district is implementing. Social and emotional skills like critical thinking, creativity, problem solving, and self-control are key to academic learning and broader child development. Next, well-designed after-school and summer enrichment programs can further improve achievement along with student-centered hands-on learning. Again, my name is Ann Costello. My website is Ann Costello for School Board, very easy to remember. There's an email address on there. My personal phone number is on there, so please feel free to reach out if you have additional questions, and I look for your support in November. Thank you.
I'm Jody Meyer, and I'm running for one of the four-year spots. I think that our focus really needs to be on getting back to the basics, and to use somewhat of a trite expression, the ABCs, which is academics and budget and communication. And I look at that as kind of a Venn diagram of overlapping issues. And broad issues. You know, academics, it's kind of a bad train wreck of events. We have kids who are behind academically and emotionally, socially from the pandemic. We are now increasing class sizes. We are losing teachers who have a lot of experience in those areas, getting teachers in there who may have less experience. And then we don't have the paras to help with this. And I can tell you one thing that you can find out if you ever substitute teach in a classroom that is large with kids with a lot of behavior issues is the necessity for having those quality people, quality paras, quality teachers, and to do that, we have to finance that stuff too. And I have a kid who is struggling from the learning loss of the pandemic year. He's probably not somebody I'm going to come here in 4 years and say is doing a STEM program at KU, and that's okay. But we got to focus on getting these kids where they need to be, and that all goes back to the teacher support. Because whether it's equity or anything else, if we're losing these people, if we don't have paras, we don't have quality teachers, then none of the rest of it is going to improve. The budget issues is something that I think needs to be looked at. I don't know if you've ever tried to get information from the school district that's in any meaningful way. It's almost impossible. And that goes along with my issues with communication. 2 years ago, I tried to get what I would call a very sliver information regarding a budgetary issue. And I started with Kathy Johnson, the finance director at the time, and I realized she's got a lot of things going on. I went back and looked at my emails, and over 3 months, I got an email with a very small paragraph that gave me no information and a detailed question list that was never answered. And so if I am somebody who tried for 3 months to get it, how can anybody get information from the school district who's not trying to do it as much as I can? And so I think with the budget issues, it's the same way. You know, trying to find out what is being spent and where money is going is really complicated. The district website is bad, it doesn't communicate well, and you almost have to be an insider to be able to understand anything that's going on. And so I think what we do need to do is look top to bottom. And I'm not saying people haven't, but it's not just a matter of state school financing, it's what we're doing with our dollars within our school district that we have. And then the communication issue, I think, is really important. I think there's a perception that decisions get made, or decisions are already made by the time they get to the school board, right? And so they're made in subcommittees that people aren't aware of. The school closure issues, I think, are a good example. We ended up having public hearings after the decision was seemingly already made, and so it looked like the public hearings were, really just for show or to appease people. We need to have meaningful communication, because if we don't have that, it ruins the relationships between parents, between staff, between administration. And so that's the things that I think that we need to focus on and that I'll work on if you elect me in November. Thank you very much.
Once again, I'm Ariel Miner, and I'm running for a 2-year seat. I just wanted to talk a little bit about how my brain works. I was interested in getting certified to teach, and so that's why I was substituting, which was a wonderful experience. I realized there are so many challenges, and a challenge I personally would have would be that I would need to go into debt to go back to school to get a teaching degree. And I also have an interest in organizational development, so I've also considered going to graduate school for that. My brain works in the way that I do see the big picture, and I want to figure out why we are in the place we are in. I love learning, teacher quality, I assume, and I love to dig into research. With that being said, I think we need more democracy in our board policies. I think the school board has not focused enough on transparency and meaningful data. The community needs and deserves this during a budget crisis with school closures. Information should be easily accessible. For example, when the district writes a check, the report should include what the good or service is providing. This is common practice in other districts. We also need to reevaluate how much money we spend on consultants. Over the last few years, the format of financial reports has changed to include less information instead of more information, which is what the community has been asking for. Also, making major contract decisions in the middle of the summer when nobody is looking right before an election is not transparent or democratic. I want things to be better for teachers, staff, my babies, your babies, our babies. I'm with Kansans United for Public Schools, fighting for fully funded education, and I truly appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Saving the best for last here. I'm Edward Gonzalez, also known as EJ Gonzalez. I am running for the 4-year term. I want to leave you with a couple of movie quotes, because I love movies and I love sports too. So the first one's coming from Remember the Titans. If you think back on that movie, there's a line in there that says, attitude reflects leadership. And if we think about our teachers and anybody else of our staff that has left this district, I think that shows you how well our leadership has done so far. To say that it's failed would be an understatement. So the first thing I would want to do would to be more transparent. When I was asking several different teachers to even just name a board member, they couldn't even do that. They will know my name if elected. I will be in those schools. I will be asking the questions on how I can help, even if it's just a simple email. In my brochure, you have my email address. I have my phone on me 24/7. My wife hates it, but I'm always on it as well. So I will respond to any communication you guys have, any questions you guys have. Additionally, I think that we need to reorganize how we're doing special needs education, making sure that we're expanding that ability. The last thing is the thing that I've harped on this entire time is equality in pay. We have one of the most expensive superintendents, and to go back into sports terms, if any of you guys are Chiefs fans, you guys remember when we were losing left and right with Todd Haley and Romeo Crennel because they weren't top tier coaches, right? We went out and got Andy Reid. We went out and got top-tier talent, and we were able to keep that top-tier talent, and we're Super Bowl contenders now. The thing is that we have top-tier talent, or at least we're paying them to be top-tier talent at the highest level, but we're not paying the lower level, so we are not Super Bowl contenders as a district right now. And that leads me into my last movie quote, and it's from my favorite superhero, Batman. It's, "Bruce, why do we fall? So we can learn to pick ourselves back up. We have fallen, ladies and gentlemen, but if elected, I'll make sure that we get back up." Thank you.